I then realized that the Jamaican culture was slowly dying. It was fading away to this new fancy lifestyle, this American style lifestyle. Things that I knew as a boy growing up, farmer, the guy riding the donkey, that was slowly being pushed away by this modern lifestyle. So I made a very conscious decision that I will only post things that are truly Jamaican, that remind me or people of my age group, people in the diaspora, of the Jamaica we grew up in.
Hello, Throp family, and welcome back to another video podcast episode here at On Deck with Throp, where we have meaningful conversations with people all about Jamaica from all over the world. I am Winthrop Wellington, your host for today, and if this is your first time visiting, a special welcome to you. We have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine that I've probably known since I first moved to Jamaica way back when. And he's doing some very, very interesting things for Jamaica through social media. And it is a real pleasure to welcome my friend Dwight Jackson to the podcast today. Welcome,
Thank
Dwight.
you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm so pleased to be here, and I feel honored that I'm sitting in your studio today.
Okay, awesome. It's my pleasure to have you. And as I alluded to, you're doing some very interesting things specifically on Instagram, and now you've transferred over, are sharing your content on YouTube with Jamaica Uncut, which I would assume many of the viewers are very familiar with Jamaica Uncut. But before we get into that, I just wanted to get a little background on yourself and get the viewers to have an understanding of where you're from, where you were born, and where you are now.
So as you said before, my name is Dwight Jackson. I was born here in Westmoreland in Orange Hill. And then as a boy, I moved to St. Elizabeth, where I spent my entire childhood into my 20s. I then moved back to Westmoreland in the early 90s, where I've been since till today. So I went to school in Mandeville, and just, you know.
And what made you move back to Westmoreland?
St. Elizabeth is kind of slow. Mm-hmm. So job opportunities, unless you're going to be a farmer, job opportunities weren't thriving. Mm-hmm. So Alpart had just closed down. And as I said, farming or working in bauxite, which I wasn't going to work in bauxite. Mm-hmm. So I moved back to Westmoreland when I got a job as a photographer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, way back in the early days.
Okay.
And then that wasn't panning out. And then I moved into the hotel industry, where I've been since. Right.
And I guess your early days photography kind of set you up in a way for what you're doing right now.
Yes.
And so then before we get into that, how did you get into the hospitality hotel industry?
During my photography years, I was working in a photo studio. I was taking pictures, cleaning pictures, the whole development, the whole works. The money was very tight, and I had my first child.
Okay.
So I needed the income. So somebody interested me in a bartending job at Hedonism.
Okay.
So I did that for a little bit. That spot wasn't for me.
Gotcha.
My soul didn't fit in. So I left from there, and that's kind of how I got into the whole hotel industry, from bartending to what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Yeah. And with that, and we were just talking off camera about the challenges of being a creator in general, and you have a full-time job with a lot of responsibilities and a lot of people that you are responsible for. How do you manage balancing both of them?
It's really hard, and I don't want to use the word frustrating, but for lack of a better word, it can become frustrating, because the love for what I do and what I do for the people that I do it for sometimes override my responsibilities with my job. And I want to do both. I'm very committed to my job, but I'm also committed to helping others.
Right.
So without help, it can become not only really expensive, because there's no money coming in from this side. So it can be very challenging. So I have to I take weekends when I'm off work to go on the street, to meet with people. And at nights, when I go home from work, I can be up until 3 a.m. just editing and putting stuff together. So it's really, really challenging.
I mean, so with that, and I understand those challenges as a fellow creator, but what was your motivation behind starting Jamaica Uncut?
That's a very interesting question. It first started when I discovered Instagram. A friend
Okay.
told me about Instagram, didn't know it, but I've always been taking pictures, but I just had them. And my friend said, you take really nice pictures, why don't you put them on Instagram? What is this Instagram? And then he set up my Instagram account. But what really got me started with Jamaica Uncut is I realized that when I go, me personally, when I go on social media, you see women posing half naked, you see people posting their cars. I'm like, this is not what I want to see on social media. So I am going to post what I want to see on social media. I then realized that the Jamaican culture was slowly dying. It was fading away to this new fancy lifestyle, this American style lifestyle, this things were coming in and the things that I knew as a boy growing up, the farmer, the guy riding the donkey, that was slowly being pushed away by this modern lifestyle. So I made a very conscious decision that I will only post things that are truly Jamaican, that remind me or people of my age group, people in the diaspora, of the Jamaica we grew up in. And that's what kind of got me started with Jamaica Uncut.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And just from my own observation, and I didn't know that that was the driving factor, but from my own observation of your page, like I get that 100%. Like you didn't even have to tell me that. And that's exactly what my experience is in viewing Jamaica Uncut on YouTube and on Instagram. And how did you get to a point, or what was the driving factor that you started to help people? And I know you've done fundraising for people who were in desperate need and having some really crazy situations. And you were kind of that shining light for these people. And how did you get into that factor?
One of the things that I always live by is that no matter what you have, no matter how much you have, if you don't have anybody to share it with, you're still just an empty soul. I grew up with very little, and I've seen my mother struggle. My mother still walk niggle 7 Mile Beach with a basket on her head and sell. So every time I see people in a position of need, I always remember my mother as a child growing up and how many nights we didn't have dinner and some random stranger would have to help us out with food. So being in a position where I have a good job that pays me well, I figured, you know what? If I am making all this money and I'm just making this money for me, it still makes me feel empty. So when my page started growing, when Jamaica Uncut started growing and people started seeing it, they would reach out to me and said, oh, there are these people in my community, they don't have a home. And then I feel the responsibility that because we have gotten so many help growing up as children, going to school, we didn't have money. Some stranger would give me a bus fare. I just felt the need that this is my calling, this is my responsibility to help people in need, because I came from nothing to, I'm not a rich person and I don't have a lot, but I feel a sense of joy inside sharing the little that I do have with those who don't have at all.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And as you tell me this story about Jamaica Uncut and helping people, is there a particular story or a particular person that you've helped out that stands out in your mind?
There is a family in Moreland Hill, and their house burnt down. I've never met them. And it was COVID. It was during COVID. And we were doing a food drive. We were just buying food out of pocket, and then people would send money through PayPal, and we would put it all together. And I was driving around in the hills just giving out chicken and whatever. And somebody said, follow me. And they took me up to this house. And a family of 6 was living in the worst condition. I'm sorry, this kind of saddens me.
Mm-hmm.
They were living in the worst condition you could ever imagine. Yeah. They had no walls. They had a half of a roof. And they were all just sleeping on the floor. And I'm like, wow, this is so sad. And I took like a 30-second video and I posted it on my Instagram, and I said, yo, Jamaica Uncut crew, we cannot have these people living like this. And we built them a house in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that was very, moving for me. And we also took a guy from the bus stop in Sheffield and also built him a house.
Man, that's incredible. And I just think of, when you tell a story like that, I just think of the power of social media, yes. But then also the power of what one individual, what one man can do with the will to make a difference. And I think that's amazing, because obviously you didn't have to do that, know, and as you said before, you're not making any money from this, or very little. And I know that struggle. And how, in your opinion, like, how do we get more people to do more things like that? And there's obviously people who have of more means than both of us combined, right? And, we want to get, anybody that has anything to contribute to efforts that you just described.
I think people just have to sometimes get out of their own way and stop thinking about themselves alone. And the same thing I said, if no matter how much you have, if you don't have anybody to share it with, or if you don't give back, then it's almost meaningless. So just stop thinking about yourself, stop living for the hype, and just think about one person who is in need. You don't have to help everyone, because you cannot help everyone. But if you just help one person and do it from a good place, don't do it for recognition, don't do it for what you're going to get back from it. Just do it from the purest, kindest place in your soul, and just know that you go to bed and you sleep well because you've done something good.
That's kind of my next question that you set me up for, is that I understand, and we understand, that there is tremendous need out there, and a lot of people need help. And then you have this platform, and you have 150,000 on Instagram.
Yeah.
150,000 followers on Instagram. I can only imagine what your DM box looks like.
Crazy.
I know.
Crazy.
How, and I'm assuming are you still doing everything?
Alone.
How do you manage that? And then how do you filter through, there are people who would try to run a scam and do this and do that, and you're just trying to genuinely help people who really need it. How do you filter through all that noise?
I reply to every DM, every single one. Each morning, 100 every morning.
Wow.
And while I iron for work, or while I brush my teeth, or while I get ready, I'm scanning through my DMs, just looking through them. And you can clearly see ones that are scamish. You delete those and you put those aside. And then I try to reach out to every person who ever reach out to me. In the end, as you said, some of them, you can't help everyone.
Right.
You cannot help everyone. And when people reach out to me who are in Portland or in Kingston, I would connect them with people who I know who are in those areas that I know offer help. Because I cannot take on a project in Kingston. I can't take on a project in Portland.
Right.
Because it's a long drive.
Yes.
So I would just connect them with my connections in those areas.
And philanthropy and charity aside, where do you get the ideas for the features and different things? Because like you said before, you're very cultural, traditional Jamaican culture focused. And I mean, I've learned so much. Obviously I didn't grow up here, and I've learned so much from your page. not only from a cultural standpoint, but even from like different physical locations and attractions and tours. But where do you get the ideas, or what is driving the ideas for your next videos?
Like I said earlier, I try to refer back to the time I grew up in Jamaica. And I try to refer back to the things I did as a child or the things I saw growing up as a boy in the country. So I will make notes of those, and I will reach out to people who I know in specific areas, and I'll say, okay, I'm trying to find somebody who makes coconut oil, or I'm trying to find somebody who makes potato pudding. I love potato pudding. Or people will reach out to me and say, yo, Uncut, there's a lady in St. Thomas who does blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, I'm heading to St. Thomas. Or if they're in Portland, I'll head to Portland. But either people call me and tell me about it, or I'll reach out and just try to do my research and find people in areas. Because I know people who live in all parishes.
I see.
So I'll call my one guy in St. Elizabeth. I call my one guy in Kingston, and he'll connect with his guys. And then I'll drive there and I'll do my story.
Okay. And I'm assuming you also do like multiple stories. You just don't go to Portland just for that one thing.
No,
okay, right.
no. If I go to Portland, I'll spend a couple of days to a week, and I'll just cover 10 stories.
Wow.
And then I'll over time, I'll put them together. But if I do a story and that story is deep and dear to my soul, I'm editing tonight. Like everything else gets cut. I'm posting this on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say most of my subscribers are very interested in either moving to or moving back to Jamaica. And I really think your page, especially for Jamaicans who were born and raised here, but have been in the States or Canada or Europe for the last 20 to 40 years, and they're ready to come back, and when they're seeing your content and they just, man, that's home. That's home.
Yeah.
And my question for you is, for those that are considering moving back to Jamaica or moving to Jamaica, what type of advice would you give them in this modern era of 2022 and beyond?
I would first say decide where you want to live. Do you want to live in the city? Do you want to live in the country? First decide what kind of vibe you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And then just do your research, check on prices for homes, cost of living, and most of all, as a stranger coming back to Jamaica, just be careful. Be careful of the kind of people you invite into your life. We're not all bad, but we're not all good. So just be careful. Don't just open your door to every person.
And you hit on a good point there with just having just a heightened sense of awareness.
Yes.
But one of the main things that you see, like when I do my YouTube lives, or even you see in the comment section, is just how dangerous Jamaica is, and people are worried about crime and violence, and some of it is being driven by people who are trolling, and then some of it is people who are really on the fence, like, oh man, do I move back to Jamaica? Such and such happened, I'm worried. And in that regard, one, what is your take on that? And then two, what type of advice would you give people who are on that fence?
I would say Jamaica is not dangerous more than any place else on earth. I mean, crime in other places are way worse than it is in Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica is small, and from a person on the outside looking in, yes, it will seem, because the news drives that. The news tend to push the negativity a lot. And unless people like me or yourself who are trying to push the positive, it's hard for them to comb through or sniff through. But I would say there are a lot of Portland. You go to Portland, people sleep with their doors open. I sleep with my door open. Like, you don't have to be afraid to move back. Like we say, just be aware. Be aware of your surroundings. Be conscious of who you're letting. Because there are people out there who are up to no good. So just be careful.
And you move all over the country.
I travel every parish. There are places in Jamaica where people say to me, do not go. And I say, you know what? If you have negative thoughts, negative vibe follow you. So when you go into a strange place, don't act all stuck up and, act like you're better than people. Be kind, and people will read that energy and they will welcome you. But at the same time, just be aware, be mindful that there are tricksters out there.
I mean, that's like my thought process, mantra, anywhere I go, in Jamaica or beyond.
Yeah,
it's
man.
like you're going to attract what you put out there.
Yes.
And I mean, and this is after saying what you just said, this might be a silly question, but do you move around Jamaica in fear?
No, I move around nowhere in fear. Never. Like some of the most dangerous towns I go to, and people said don't go. Initially, they have driven fear into me, and I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go. But I sleep on it, and I'll just wake up one morning, and you know what? I'm heading to Spanish Town. I'm heading to wherever. And I just go all free. And whenever I go into somebody's town, I'm a stranger there, I am just open, and I'm kind, and I talk to the guys in the street, but I don't go to them all tense up. Mm-hmm. I just go to them with a nice vibe and manners, and because one of the things I find, is Jamaicans will treat you how you treat them. So if you go at them all, then they're going to come back at you. But if you go to them, hi, good morning, how you doing? They will give you that same vibe back.
I totally agree with that. And I'll say this is going to sound so stupid, and to your point of how you interact with people. And I'm coming from, and I'm just setting up the context, born and raised in New York, coming from America, and I moved down here when I was 22. And Americans, for one, but most especially New Yorkers, we're not one to walk into a room and say good morning.
No.
We're just not. I mean, being on the subway, going through, everybody is just blinders doing what they do. And so when I came here, I was the same way. And then being in the hotel and being in the hotel industry with team members, and they were like, everybody's like, it's so rude. It took me so long. They call it like, everybody's like, I'm rude and this. I'm like, we don't do that. We don't do that. But now it's turned into a situation where it is so much part of my personality and my vernacular that when I go back to New York and I say good morning when I walk into a room, I'm the crazy person. Like, who is this guy? Like, what's wrong with him? And it's just so fun. But it's so, it is like, I appreciate it so much. When you're sitting in the dentist's office or a doctor's office and somebody just walks in and says good morning to everybody. Yeah. And it is just so welcoming. And especially if you're going into a strange place or something like that and you're the one who's initiating that morning, it just brings the vibe to a certain level, and a certain respect is just given immediately right across the board.
It cuts the ice, because you walk in and say, hey, good morning. Even if that person is having not so great of a day,
right,
you kind of set a tone and take them off that edge that they're on.
I feel like it's such a superpower, like being outside of Jamaica, like even just getting on an elevator in New York and say good morning, and everybody's like, what
is wrong with this guy?
But you're right. I think it brightens their day.
It does. Yeah, and in Jamaica, growing up in the old days, you could not, and your father can tell you this, you could not say good morning to an elderly person, because that person would whoop your butt and then go tell your dad, who's going to whoop your butt again. So it was almost driven into us that you had to have manners, you had to say good morning, you had to be pleasant. And even if your parents did not speak to the neighbor, because they're adults, they can do that, you are in no position to not speak to the neighbor. So we grew up with that in Jamaica, and it carries you through. And I find that now that I'm traveling a lot and going into very, very strange places, it helps a lot, because your personality and you look happy. People tend to just gravitate towards that vibe.
And you were saying earlier that one of the driving and motivating factors for starting Jamaica Uncut was you were seeing the culture being driven away from
Yes.
these traditional habits or traditional ways of life. And do you see it as from a social media or national perspective? Do you see even things of that nature that Jamaicans or maybe young Jamaicans are steering away from?
Yes, and also it starts from the home. Because of this modern lifestyle and the way people do things or see things, or everybody is in a rush to get things done or to make this money. Nobody teaches their children anymore morals. So even the same good morning, that's not taught in the household anymore because nobody have time for that. And children just grow up, and these children that now turn into adults, they did not learn the core values of being a Jamaican. So that's where all that external, that outside influence has moved in, and everybody is just this fast lifestyle, this fast lifestyle. Nobody has time to remember where we're coming from and what made us Jamaicans. Because for me, Jamaican is not a birthright. Jamaican is not a piece of paper that you got in the hospital when you were born. It's a lifestyle, it's an experience. So it's that same good morning. It's that, hi, Mas Jane, how you doing? How is your father? That whole vibe that makes Jamaica and makes Jamaicans. The way we walk, our mannerisms. That's what make you a Jamaican. So your parents are probably Jamaican, but does that make you Jamaican? No, you grew up in New York. You first came to Jamaica. You didn't know anything about good morning and howdy and them kind of things. So you didn't, because your parents wouldn't have taught you that because you grew up in a different place. So I started Jamaica Uncut because of the whole, I find that our culture is just fading away, it's just dying out. And I'm at a loss, like, why aren't schools doing anything about it? Why aren't there government programs? Why aren't there community programs to not go back and live in a stone age, but remind us of the core Jamaica making us Jamaicans? And that's why I push so hard to share true and only true Jamaican vibe on Jamaica Uncut. And even if it's a paid event, I am not doing it if it doesn't fit the culture within my page.
I see. What is your biggest fear if Jamaica continues to head down this path and moving away from the traditional Jamaica?
My biggest fear is that we heavily depend upon tourism, and we heavily depend upon investors coming into Jamaica. And my biggest fear is that if we continue down this path, then we would have lost the reason in the first place why they wanted to come. The reason that made Jamaica the Jamaica that they fell in love with, why they felt like they want to come here and invest. And if we continue down that path, I mean, some of the violence that we see nowadays are just going to elevate and are going to push people away. And I think my biggest fear to all of those is that my children and grandchildren won't have a place to live that they love and call home. That's my overall biggest fear.
And do you think that is something that is likely or a possibility of happening?
I mean, if we do nothing about it, then yes. If we do nothing to fix what's happening now, then it is a possibility. But we can also fix it if we all come together as not government, because we can't all depend on government to fix things. If we all come together as people of Jamaica, people who love Jamaica, people who live in Jamaica, we can fix it.
And how do you think do you think there is a way that the Jamaican diaspora can help with this, or even Jamaicans who are going to be moving back to Jamaica?
Wow, I mean, that's a trick question. If you are not in Jamaica and you want to help, wow, that's a very good question. That's a good question.
And I'll bring a little context to it, because you mentioned And I guess we could come back to that. So just now you mentioned and talked about investors coming into Jamaica and foreign investors. And I consider, in a way, like people who want to lift up from where they're living and move to Jamaica, buy a house here, build a home, or rent, whatever it is. To me, they're contributing significantly to the economy. But I also think, outside of the economic aspect of it, I think they're also contributing their minds, their experience from abroad, but having been raised here in many cases, they also still have and hold that traditional Jamaica that you are alluding to. And so, in my mind, the combination of this global or foreign experience and putting it together with the traditional Jamaican experience and sharing that in whatever way that they can or do, I think that brings an element to the country, especially to young people, and depending on how much that those individuals want to give back and be a part of the community, I think it really could give Jamaica a competitive advantage.
I mean, if people who are moving back to Jamaica, they have a history with Jamaica, they know the culture. If they could be a part of the education, because one of the things that we lack is education. If you don't know, you don't know. You can't know until you know. So if they can help with the education and teaching the youth, start some kind of community center, start something within wherever you move back to, and make it somewhere where people need help. People are going through whatever they're going through. There's a place for them to come to, and somebody will listen, and somebody is going to help. If you can do that, then that's a big plus.
I agree. And with all the investment that's happening in Jamaica, from commercial to residential and otherwise, how do you feel about the direction that Jamaica is heading in that regard?
I feel like the investment good because they bring money into the country. Building homes are good, but then if you build these homes and nobody can afford to buy them, then it's almost pointless. Because you're building houses and you say, okay, it's for low-income earners, but then low-income earners can't afford them, then you're almost back to where you're coming from. Because people with money are just going to come in and buy them up. So the local guy, the little guy in the street who is pushing his handcart or who is working a bartending job down the street, he still cannot afford a home. So that doesn't help anyone. So yeah, you invest, but until you start investing into ways where the regular schmegler guy in the street can profit or gain from, then who are you investing for? What are you doing?
I did a video recently highlighting the Kingston real estate boom that's happening. And one of the comments, a comment that I keep seeing reoccurring, is in relation to the gentrification that's happening in Kingston, which I think is a very fair point. And being from New York, being in Brooklyn, I've seen it happen firsthand. Like neighborhoods that I would never ever go into as a child are now multi-million-dollar apartments that the average New Yorker American just can't afford. It's just really just for rich and affluent people. And Jamaica is heading, at least parts of it, is heading in that direction. And I am not anti-development. I am not moving the economy forward or anything like that. And I understand we do got to move forward, but I do agree with you that what about the regular guy? And I guess my question to you is, how can we, or how do you see us really focusing on that demographic of people?
That's where the government would come in, because they have the power to set standards and make sure that when these housing development come in and they're building out these properties, because as you said, development is good. It's good for everyone. The place look good. People want to move in. Money is spending. But then the guy down the street, if the government can't set systems in place where houses are priced, where the average family can afford a home, then again, it makes no sense. So the leaders or the powers of being has to make sure that there are set standards. When you build these houses, if you say it's for low income earners, the guy who already has a house in New Kingston can't come and buy up 10 of them because it is for low. It happened in Negril a couple of years ago when they were cutting up Whitehall housing scheme. It was meant to be for low income earners. And then low income earners started buying them. And then the rich guy be like, yo, give me 20 lots. And just bought the whole thing up.
I didn't even know that.
And then the prices spiked. And then the regular guy who earned $7,000 a week now cannot afford this house because they saw, wow, you can buy 10, means the price need to go up.
So essentially, this is the first I'm hearing this. So essentially what happened is that, or what you're advocating for is that when a development is being put in place, that there's a stipulation that's in place that you can't earn over a certain amount.
No, it's not for you. If you can buy 5 lots, this is not for you.
Right.
If you already have a house in Portland and a house in Mandeville, this is not for you. Just like the NHT, you cannot go to the NHT and take out a loan if you already have a house. They're not going to give it to you. We need more like those, where if you're earning a couple of, let's say $4 million a year or whatever, this is not for you. So it has to be very strict. It has to be, and somebody has to follow up and make sure that they're abiding by these set laws.
And so there's nothing in place like that?
I mean, if a private investor come in, you cannot,
right.
You can't tell me how much to sell my thing for. It's my money. I already got the license from you to build it. I'm selling it for how much I feel like selling it for. So that's where the government has to be strict to make sure that if you're coming in to invest, we're selling you this land for cheap because you're going to be investing. You have to allow low-income earners to be able to afford these houses.
Oh, that makes sense. So Whitehall was a private?
Whitehall was government.
Okay.
So it started out as government.
Okay.
And they were selling these lots for like 100,000 J. Cheap. Then rich people noticed this and like, wow. And they started coming in, and because you only get like a square of land.
Right.
So they were buying like 5 bits next to each other so they could build a mansion in Tank Hill and the back of Whitehall. Then all of a sudden, the prices spiked out, and the regular guy who works as a bartender now couldn't afford one anymore.
That's a real shame. And like the Prime Minister says this a lot. It's just like the sense of pride that you get from being adult man or woman, from owning your land and owning and having your home. It just takes society as a whole to another level.
Yes.
Takes society as a whole to another level.
Yes.
And I know, keeping it in the grill, we have a squatting problem here, especially downtown. And my personal opinion is that, like, government failed. To allow these mini cities to envelop prime property but just to continue to grow and grow and grow. And now they have a plan that's been in place for many years to move these folks and put them in proper housing, which I agree with. Nick, nobody should be living in 2022 modern day Jamaica.
No.
Nobody should be living in board houses or not having running water, etc.
That's very true.
And my question is like, I mean, one, I don't understand how they're going to do this, move these people, because I know they tried before and there were a lot of problems with that. But then, to your point, it's like, what is going to stop them? And I know, I'm pretty sure they have an allocated development that they want to move a lot of these folks. What is going to stop what happened in Whitehall from happening in this new development?
I don't know. One of the things that they say is that there is land in Namprel Road, in the back of Namprel, but there's no system. What they're doing is asking these folks to just go up and just fence off, pick a spot, and just put a fence around it. There is no system. So who is monitoring how this is done. So, all right, I have a house. Can I just go and fence off a piece of land too? There is no monitoring and no systems in place to make sure that this is done right. And then because of that, these folks are afraid to go and just randomly pick a piece of land, so they're still squatting.
That is so concerning. Extremely, extremely concerning. And like to me, that's one of Negro's biggest problems, honestly, is the housing. And it just kind of gets kicked down the road and swept under the carpet just year after year. And I know we have other issues, but man, when you think about the longevity of a community, the longevity of society, and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that is shelter. That is shelter. And man, like it's that and education. You know, those are the two things that I think are plaguing at least our little community here. And it's hard, and I understand, like it's like from like a political level, it's not something that's solved in just one stint of your career. Like you almost need to make a sacrifice that somebody comes in and is like, all right, you know, I have 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. This is I know I won't accomplish it during my time, but hopefully I can make enough headway to pass the baton to the next person. And whether I get elected or not the next time, at least this process is started and has been advanced. So
like I feel like there are enough organizations in the grill that if we all came together and came together seriously and not just sit and have random conversations, we know that every time we sit, this is what we're fixing. So if it wasn't done, when we meet next time, we're continuing this conversation. And if we all came together, I'm sure that us as business people and you know, just a lot of regular guys can come together and make Negril a really nice place.
I think that that's the only way it's going to happen, honestly. Because if you think about it, can you even imagine where Negril would be without these private entities? Without the Rotary Club, without the soup kitchen.
Wouldn't have a road.
It boggles my mind. I mean, the organizations and the commitment they have to this community is insane. And it's because they see, or I guess we see, the gap that's there. And it's so scary to think about, especially with the kids.
You have to understand, Throp, that government don't live in Negril, Government won't come to Negril unless they're on vacation. So it's not in their interest per se to fix a pothole or to make sure that the people in retreat have running water. It's not in their interest at all. So it takes us who live in the area, who want our children to have clean beaches, to make sure that we take to the beach once a year and clean up the beach, to make sure that we cut the grass on the side of the road, to make sure that, you know, if there's a homeless guy, you probably help and find him somewhere to live. That is not government's priority. So if we want this to be our home, then it's going to take us as the people of Negril to make our home for ourselves.
And as you were like listing out all those things, there are, I guess the people don't know, but there are individuals and individual organizations who have taken it upon themselves to clean the beach, to cut the road, to clean up the road regularly throughout the year. And it's just crazy to me, but you're right. If we want to see change, we got to be the change that we want to see.
Change. You can't sit down and just wait on somebody to come clean your house for you. You have to clean it yourself.
And I think that's what we've been doing as a community. And I don't think certain government entities and individuals really understand the power and the commitment that the individual and individuals in the individual organizations have in Negril.
It's not that important to them, so.
Oh, fair enough. What is the future for Jamaica Uncut, both Instagram and also YouTube?
I would like to continue what I'm doing, and I would love to be able to help more people. But like I said, I'm not a rich person, and most of the money I spend is out of pocket. And for the few people on Instagram who would pitch in from time to time and help. But my goal is to just be able every day to just help somebody else, help a homeless guy, help a person who has no money, no food. That's my kind of my goal. Because without helping people, to me, I feel like life doesn't even make any sense.
Mm-hmm. And if you did have, more money, is this something, Jamaica Uncut that is that something that you would want to build out in terms of like having people be part of your team?
Yes. I would love to, if this was feasible,
mm-hmm.
or tomorrow morning, for whatever strange reason, I wake up and I could just push my all into this, I would love to have a team of guys, or a team of builders, where we could just go into community and in a week we could just build up a house for somebody, a team of guys who could just drive around into communities and just give out food. And, just one of the things I would love to do is to be able to have a place where if somebody want to just talk, something's happening in your life, you just want to talk about it. I'm a very good listener. So I just, something like that. Because I find that a lot of things that is going on in our community, if these youths had somebody that they respected, that they could go to and talk about some things that's happening at home, and we could solve that from a home level before it gets into anger to get into the street, would have been just like as a youth, as I said, you could not be a bad child when I was growing up, because the neighbors all looked out for you. The whole community, the whole neighborhood looked out for every child in the neighborhood. So you could not be at a place where you're not meant to be, because somebody's going to check you. So I just wish, I was in a position where I could have youth just come to me and just talk and just tell me things that what's going on. Let's talk about it. What makes you angry and what makes you upset. And we talk about it. And then maybe we wouldn't have a lot of these youth on youth violence that we have today, if somebody would just listen.
Man, that's such a good point. And generically speaking, there is just so, and I don't think we address and bring this to light enough, but in Jamaica, there is a lot of trauma that our young people go through. They see a lot of things. I mean, 22 years of living in America, I never seen a dead body, never seen somebody die. My first few months in being Jamaica, I see a horrific bike accident, and the guy, he wasn't dead, but he was dying on the spot. And I've never seen that. But then when you talk to a young person, they've seen that since they were 4 or 5 years old, whether it's an accident or some other type of trauma. And you just become very, even as an adult, desensitized to these type of things. Definitely. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that. And unfortunately, I feel that there are not that many outlets, as you were saying, for these young people, especially the young boys, to go to, to express themselves. And just a person, a mentor, like you said, somebody that they look up to and that can trust, that they can have these conversations, to let it out and to help them understand that it's okay, bring some perspective to it as well. And I think that's a very, very powerful idea. Right. What would it take for something like that to happen?
It would take funding. It would definitely take funding, and a place. We would need a place where your door is always open. I mean, it can't be your home, and I don't have an external space like an abandoned building or warehouse or something. But we would need funding. We would need a place. What
kind of funding are we talking? I don't know how much thought you put into it.
I don't know. I figure that with funding, it's probably going to change depending on situations. Because if a guy needs a house because his house burned down, then that's going to be a different amount of money from a guy just need food.
Right.
The soup kitchen down in Negril is doing a great job. So if we could combine the soup kitchen with a space just to talk, that would be great, because that's already happening. You're hungry, you can come get food. You want to talk about something that's bothering you, you can meet me over here. So that's already a start. So if we could expand on that and grow that into a one spot people already trust the father. They already trust that this is a safe space. Now we just need another safe space within the safe space where we can have conversations. Young girls just the same. A young girl gets raped. Who does she talk to?
Right.
There's no one to talk to. One of the things about what I find with Jamaicans is that we don't respect or appreciate mental health issues. Because we grew up in a time where you're meant to be tough. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to be talking about what's bothering you. Because then that's another ass whooping right there. So you grew up just suppressing all this trauma, all this pain, all this anger. Because nobody gives you an open space to say, this thing is bothering me. So then you just wake up one day and explode. A young girl gets raped, she doesn't trust anybody. What she do? She take it to the street, she end up on the bridge at night. A young boy, what does he do? He starts robbing someone because he doesn't have anybody to go to. And we need those.
Man, that is so powerful what you just said, because that is the reality here. That is completely the reality of what's happening. And I think from a societal level, a lot of these traumas just get swept under the carpet, and a lot of it happens within the family makeup.
Yeah, right. It starts right at home. The way your father treated, the way your mother talked to you.
Yep.
It starts right at home. And then you grow up as a man now thinking that is the accepted way of speaking to your spouse or speaking to your child. And then it just keeps going. Who's going to break it? You know?
Yeah, and it my dad was talking, we did a live session yesterday or on Sunday, and my dad was talking about how he was raised, and he said verbatim he got a whooping every day, and any day that he missed that whooping, he got two the next day.
Like growing up, I grew up in that time. We would get, if it was ass whooping time, even if you did nothing, there's enough to go around. So I'm just whooping everybody today.
Yep.
And you would wonder, why am I getting beat? And as a child, you thought, well, you know, his dad used to beat him. His dad used to beat his dad. And until one day, I'm like, no, this cannot be life. Like, you cannot just beat children for no reason. And I had to say to my dad one day, like, you have to stop. Like, this cannot go on. And it was not a nice exchange, but over time he got it, and I would never beat my children, ever.
And same with my dad. My dad never hit us.
Never.
And he said that because of what he went through as a child.
I get enough for my great-grandchildren to come. Never. Yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. And I guess maybe I just didn't appreciate it enough growing up. I appreciate it now as an adult, but that my dad, that he didn't hit us. And I just had this great respect for my dad growing up. And anytime he talked, I listened. And I don't know, maybe it was because we didn't get beatings, and it wasn't a fear. I didn't fear my dad as a child. But he always, how my dad talks to me now as a 38-year-old man, that's how he talked to me when I was 6 years old, 7 years old, with the same level of respect and trust. And even when I messed up as a kid, I lied or I got in trouble in school, whatever it is, he always talked to me like a man as an adult. And I think there's a lot to be said about that and your mentality and your approach to parenting of not hitting your children.
No. Like I have a 6-year-old, and she will scold me. 6-year-old. And I would sit there and listen, and if I'm wrong, I would say, I'm sorry. As a child growing up, my parent, I love my mother. But if I would say to my mother, you are wrong, you should say you're sorry, she would look at you and say, you're lucky. Make your food to eat, or make your place to sleep. Who you going to talk about sorry? Sorry for what? You go on about your business. And that was it. She would never say she was sorry. Oh, yeah.
It's a different time.
It's a different
way of parenting, modern way of parenting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I applaud you. I definitely applaud you in that regard. Yeah. Where can people find out more about Jamaica Uncut? Where can they contribute and donate? And I know you have these fundraisers, and I think it's so important that my subscribers go to your channel on YouTube, and as well, if they're not subscribed or following you on Instagram, that they do the same.
So on Instagram is Jamaica_Uncut, and then Facebook and YouTube is just Jamaica Uncut. I won't take donations unless I'm running a project.
Gotcha.
Because people's minds kind of get weird when it comes to their money. And I don't want to just be taking somebody's money with no immediate need for it. So if I set up a GoFundMe, then I'll let people know that I'm doing this specific task or project. But on a day-to-day, unless they want to just donate to PayPal for the sake of, because money is always in my PayPal, and I will use that because I have it on hand to just run a project quickly because a child needs money for school. I'll just use money from that. So if I'm running a project, then I'll let you folks know that I'm running a specific project, and I'm very transparent. I'll tell every day we bought timber. I'll always keep people posted on what we're doing, and even if the money isn't enough, I'll always spend out of pocket. I won't keep going back and say, "Oh, we ran out of money because things raised." I'm not that kind of person.
How do you then? Okay, so with that, then how would you separate, say, ongoing support of your channel from fundraising? Because I put that in context because I think it's the work that you're doing is so important, and the light and eyeballs that you're shining on Jamaica, its culture, and even the positiveness that you bring about Jamaica, because the negativeness and sensationalization of violence is just incredible about Jamaica. And I think there needs to be more support of your channel and what you're doing. And so if people just want to hey, I want to support your dream, Dwight, and what you're doing in Jamaica Uncut, how is that separated? Or have you figured that out?
Well, I have a PayPal link in my bio. Mm-hmm. And if somebody just want to donate because they want to support what I'm doing, for gas money or whatever the situation may be, there's always a PayPal link in the top of the page on Facebook and Instagram that you could donate to if you feel like donating. Okay,
excellent. And do you have, and maybe we could talk about this more off camera, your channel memberships signed up on your YouTube page?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, you probably don't. But so channel memberships are, and I'm getting a little bit technical YouTube, but channel memberships are like people pay like a monthly.
Oh no, I don't have that. No.
Okay, we gotta make sure we get that set up for you, and like at least automatically there'll be a group of people, like you'll get X amount of dollars per month, and that's gonna help you, and you can just bank on that every month. I
don't have that.
So I know a lot of you guys out there will support Dwight and what he's doing. Again, really, I encourage you all out there to check out his page. He's doing incredible things. And as you just heard, he is really, really all about the culture of Jamaica, the traditional culture about Jamaica, and showcasing it. And he goes into some places, into some hills, into the country of Jamaica. And like he said, he's not moving throughout Jamaica in fear whatsoever.
Never.
And I just want to say thank you so much, Dwight, for joining me here today on the podcast. And I want to continue to wish you all the luck in the world, and again, encourage everybody to go subscribe to your YouTube channel ASAP.